Hi everyone, it's your gem miner here. Browsing through some of my notes from 10 years ago, I stumbled upon this rather cryptic entry. The cause of all suffering is two things. It's something I read in one of the Osho books back in the day. Right, what are those things exactly? Having the scientific mind like myself, I tried to solve this mathematically first. So here, you have the cause root of suffering, and supposedly, according to the book I read, it equals expectations. Is this correct though? Let's check. We can raise both sides to the power of cause, and now we have suffering equals expectations to the power of cause. We can now multiply all the characters. Okay, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Let's go back. Joking aside, I do really think that expectations are usually the reason, because they drive your mind into the future, which is uncertain like almost always. And because of that fact, if something goes sideways but your mind was already expecting the reward, you'll end up with a feeling of disappointment in a like hangover of sorts. Let's think about it. You want to do something, say solve some problem, like getting out of bed and surviving through the day. Easy enough. Ideally, you would want to have a great day, be productive, finish all those tedious tasks you have somewhere in the back of your mind, perhaps some exercise to keep your body healthy, and before you know it, you may find yourself fantasizing and thinking about how great your life would be in a couple of years if every day was like that. So these expectations and over anticipation, instead of focusing on what's here and now, like getting out of bed without tripping on the banana skin, you already traveled into the future where your life is all perfect. At least that's how my mind like to do it sometimes, from time to time. Not that often. Usually, almost all. Okay, stop. This thinking ahead too much may lead to stress, which now needs to be relieved somehow. So here is an idea. Let's binge watch this stupid TV series that I don't really care about. And there you go. The day's over, and I didn't do what I wanted to. Biologically, I understand it as if I create some goals for myself. It starts this dopamine production in the brain to get my body motivated. But if this goal is too complex or difficult, it needs to be broken down into smaller steps. Now it's easy to get hijacked by these low dopamine activities that require less work. And bam, in the end of the day, dopamine clears off, but you don't feel like you've achieved anything. And that usually equals pain. But not like you burned your finger or something. Psychological pain that chases off the sleep each night until you're 40 years old and you realize maybe it's time to change something. But then in the morning, you forget all about it. And so it continues. Okay, let's focus on positivity here. So we can map it like that. We have the goal, then there is the dopamine releasing, and either you're failing because it's too hard or too complex, or there are some distractions and easier tasks to do. Then dopamine clears off, and you're left with this pain or feeling of failure or self letdown, let's say. In the other scenario, you also have the goal, the dopamine releasing, so it's all the same. And let's say you're successfully doing some part or even the full goal itself. Dopamine clears off, and now you're left with satisfaction. In both scenarios, dopamine eventually fades, so there is some letdown part to it always, but depending on the activity performed, you can be either left with this feeling of satisfaction that you pushed yourself closer to whatever you set your mind to, or with a feeling of wasted time and energy. Or maybe it doesn't have to be so two dimensional, like only failing and succeeding. I mean, technically it is, but it is also about building your resilience to failure and treating it as a learning lesson. Eventually, with enough of those lessons, you can mark certain performance as success according to your own pathological standards. The clue here would be to mark every day as success. Every moment is precious, so you better appreciate the small things. Hey, is that my mom talking or something? All right. It also depends on how whatever activity plays into your value hierarchy. Sometimes, especially when you're young, you can play video games all day and have a good time with your friends, and it doesn't necessarily need to translate into the feeling of failure or something like that. I hope that's understandable. I don't want to paint the picture of how you need to be always productive, always learning, always working every day, and min maxing everything to achieve big success by age 23. Get up before 5 a.m. All that bullshit. Okay, so let's backtrack a bit. We have those expectations, these big dreams, fantasies, complex and difficult goals. They drive your mind into the future, and this is where it's even harder to stay focused on the present. Do something step by step, one thing at a time, etc. But even with really small tasks, the mechanism can still kick in. For example, I love playing chess and bridge, where basically each move and each card play can be presented as some problem to be solved. What do I pick? Is this the correct choice? I need to calculate this through. And now it's also easy to fall into this trap where if you care about winning and gaining some ranking or just having a good score in general, your mind can hijack the processing power and distract you from actually focusing on solving the problem. It's like the winning part and the good score should be the byproduct of a solved problem and not the core motivation itself. But my regular experience is that when I start thinking, and there are a lot of variations to consider, I go with the first one, it doesn't work, then I go with the next one. When it also doesn't work, I tend to get impatient and just pick some option randomly because I want to win already. I have to win. I can already see it happening. It usually is the wrong decision. And now I suffer because I was so invested in winning in the result and not the process of getting there. And don't get me wrong here, if you like playing or doing something competitively, wanting to win part is definitely crucial, but these are those subtle differences I'm talking about. It really can be a thin line between staying motivated to look for the best decision and snapping into frustration, taking shortcuts like, oh, maybe this will work, whatever. It's almost as if our brains did not evolve to solve these abstract, complex problems, counting variations in chess. Yeah, so if you don't train yourself to be patient and resilient to failure, you'll just fall for it most of the time. Enough thinking, do something, make something happen. Do you get that feeling like your brain is sometimes shouting at you? Okay, never mind. Some of the most peculiar things that I'm experiencing sometimes is also when I'm playing a bridge tournament and I start relaxed. I don't care that much about winning. Let's just play and enjoy the game, right? But then, after a few rounds, which went really great because of rational, calm, and calculated decisions during the boards, and some luck with the opponent's mistakes as well, now my mind is starting to care. Oh, now we're tied for a third or a second place, with some chances to even win the whole thing. It's again this euphoric emotion that blinds the reasoning. I'm starting to think about being the winner instead of just playing how I did in the beginning. There is pressure. Now I have something to prove to everybody, and so on and so on. These thoughts hijack the processing power. I make some silly, reckless decisions and finish the tournament on the seventh place. Which in itself doesn't have to be a bad result, of course. According to my pre tournament approach, it would be a great score, because I didn't care that much back then. And no, it's not a 7th out of 8. Come on. But near the end of the tournament, where the possibility of winning was on the horizon, now the 7th place felt like a failure. If only I was able to control myself and didn't jump on this winning hype train that my mind produced for me. Okay, but let's go back to our equation maybe. You know how in maths the result of square root of 4 is not only 2 but also minus 2? It's rarely useful as in nature we don't really need negative numbers, so it's intuitive to just think about 2. Unless maybe you're $500,000 in debt. Well, anyhow, the root cause of suffering can also be something else, namely attachment. But let's leave this one for another video maybe. I could sum it up even in a more general sense, where every change has the potential to cause suffering. Change requires our mind to work, to consume resources, to adapt to the situation, and we evolved precisely to conserve energy for survival and use it only in the critical moments or when we feel safe. With over anticipation or these expectations way up high, The change becomes more frequent as reality checks arrives at your table and the waiter is expecting the 20% tip as well. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll be back with some other gems soon.